February episode of Fintech Firebrand. I'm Virginie O'Shea, founder of Firebrand Research, and I'm here to chat to you about all things fintech and finreg this month. Now, we got some progress. On the ESG front, the European Commission and ESMA have both indicated that they are looking at the ratings community for ESG ratings. So they've put out a consultation out to the market asking for feedback. They're very interested in finding out more about the market structure for ESG ratings providers in terms of their size, their resourcing, their revenues and their various product offerings. So they're asking everybody in the market to send responses back before the 11th of March, which was the cut-off deadline for the consultation. So it should be interesting to see what they receive back, given the diversity of different sources people are using across the market, though there has been consolidation and mergers within that realm. Another topic I've been talking about nearly every episode, I think, is the move to T+1 settlement that's been proposed for the US market. Now, there's been a lot more discussion. In fact, SIFMA, the industry association group in the US, put out an opinion piece last month, it must be towards the end of last month, about why T+0 is going to be a challenge. It probably won't deliver as many benefits as the move to T+1 will. So there's been a lot of discussion across the industry. In fact, Firebrand are putting together a piece of research highlighting the international perspective on the developments. So look out for that piece coming soon. But in the meantime, we've got confirmation from Canada, the Canadian regulators, the CSA, the top three regulators within the market there, that they will be moving to a T+1 settlement alongside the US market. So that's interesting progress. We wonder whether there'll be any other declarations by different regulators on the same front. So, as we all know, the CFTC in the US is also beginning to staff up. We're seeing more appointments across the various directorships. Not quite yet are we seeing new commissioners, but we're hopeful that will happen in the next month as well. But we saw last month Rostin Benham's first speech as CFTC chair, and he directly addressed the silence that they've had over specific topics, including fintech, distributed finance and cryptocurrency regulation. So he called it the innovative elephant in the room during his speech, but pointed out that the regulator is hard at work in terms of assessing the market in this space. It's actively looking to recruit more people and staffing up. We can see more enforcement actions taking place as well. We've seen quite a few high-profile ones in the last month or so. So certainly the CFTC is going to be much more active this year, and we can expect much more discussion with the other regulators within the same space, including those across the globe. Now, operational resilience has continued to be a big topic. The FCA in the UK has also been talking about it. Last month, or towards the end of last month, they conducted a particular session on the topic that I listened into, in which they were pointing out best practices for financial institutions, and they included making sure that firms should prioritise minimising the impact on consumers and markets rather than their own firms, for example. Also looking at understanding how firms have gone about putting together these plans for business continuity, and also focusing on how to avoid operational resilience where issues or operational risk where possible, rather than only focusing on how they'd recover in the event of an incident. So certainly there is much more detail the regulator would like to see from firms under its purview. Similar content to a lot of the discussions we've been seeing within the US and Europe, for that matter, on this topic. There's a lot of focus on firms improving their planning, improving their transparency around how to recover and how to address potential operational failures and issues, particularly with regards to concentration risk. And on that note, it was interesting to see ESMA and the other European level regulators talking about the new world order with regards to the digital future. Now, they put out a report at the start of February, some quite surprising and interesting things in there with regards to how they plan to change the regimes across Europe and also cooperate with their international counterparts with regard to monitoring cloud providers, being much more active and monitoring how those big techs that offer cloud services are operating in the market and the various avenues in which they have developed financial services capabilities as well. So more of a holistic view of big tech influence within the financial services realm, including capital markets and the potential for concentration risk. Obviously, that's part of the Digital Operational Resilience Act, a big regulation that I've been talking about for a little while under the moniker of Dora the Explorer. And certainly that was referenced many times in the report. Somewhat surprisingly, within the report, there's also acknowledgement that there may be some gaps with regard to current regulation around systemically important types of financial parties within the market. So looking at vendors specifically and those providing third-party services that are not done within the four walls of a bank or other type of financial institution. So namely, they are looking at sort of centralized services such as trade confirmation, risk reduction services like margin compression, particularly within. And my final thoughts for the month reflect a very interesting discussion I chaired at the end of last month on the topic of the risks to avoid in 2022. Now, I had some great panelists, and I do encourage you to go to the Wall Street Horizon website and check out a recording of the panel. But in terms of the highlights, we talked about a lot of different things. Now, the types of risks firms are very worried about, I've spoken about it already. Operational resilience, operational risk is one big topic that firms are trying to get much more clued up about. But there's also the spectre of cybersecurity and cyber risk that we need to understand much better. And cyber risks come in many forms from many various different corners of the criminal community. Now, one of the topics that we discussed during the session was data risk around misinformation. Now, being able to distinguish fake news from real news is getting increasingly difficult, and everything is becoming much more sophisticated. Look at deepfakes, for example, with AI being deployed, and also, lots and lots of sophisticated tools out there to fool the market, institutional and retail investors alike. So certainly that was a big topic. That's something that the industry needs to get much smarter about going forward. The regulators are heavily fixated on it. We also discussed ESG and the topic of greenwashing. Likewise, that's a big area that firms may have reputational risks associated with it as well. Understanding the data is another key component of that. Being able to understand the provenance and the quality of your data, and being able to stand behind the decisions that you've put out there with regards to sustainability or social impacts for that matter. So certainly big topics there. And now we also interestingly looked at crypto and the metaverse. And as anyone that's paying attention to the news at the moment will know, that we have some issues happening between Ukraine and Russia that are causing sort of an international concern and international geopolitical risk at the moment. Now, there was a lot of discussion about crypto assets, decentralized finance, and KYC challenges, sanctions challenges, particularly if we see much more sanctions being very specific around Russia as well. There's always a changing situation you have to manage from the perspective of doing KYC, which can be much more challenging if there isn't the amount of transparency you need, as there currently isn't within the cryptocurrency realm. So risks abound everywhere, and certainly something that we have to all pay attention to, get much smarter about. And there are always new categories of risk. If there's nothing, we can always assume that there's going to be a new risk coming out that we haven't anticipated. And with that, hopefully I've given you some interesting points, and please do message me if there's anything you'd like to talk about.